Welcome to Cody in the Cinema. Today, I'm discussing The Mother and the Whore. That's just got a 4K release from the Criterion collection. It is a 1973 classic that did win the Cannes Film Festival that year and was quite controversial for how spicy it was, so to speak. Directed by Jean Eustache, and if you're not familiar with this changed how I looked at this film a little bit, because I did not know that the lead actor, Jean-Pierre Laude, I did not know he was the same kid who starred in the 400 Blows. And this really actually made a difference in how I viewed this film, which I'm hoping to touch on here a little bit. So the film follows him, but it kind of ventures into other territory in terms of point of view. You know, I don't want to kind of give that away, but there are two other actresses here. There's the fling, who you know the title affectionately calls the whore, and there's some more meaning around that term as the film goes on that I won't spoil. And then there's the girlfriend, the living girlfriend, who does act in some ways like a mother or a glorified roommate named Marie. Okay, and those performances are tremendous in the story. But like I said, they're a little bit of point of view kind of shifting, and it's kind of tough to say that there's like a definitive protagonist throughout the story. So I wanted to read you this piece from Roger Ebert's 1999 review, because this film for a long time was difficult for people to even access. And there's been a lot of excitement around the release of this Criterion, for example. So he says, "The Mother and the Whore made an enormous impact when it was released," and he's saying this part, remember, 99, so I'm releasing this video in 2025. And what he's saying here is also true now 25 years later from the review. The movie still works a quarter century later because it was so focused on its subjects, those three, and lacking in pretension. It is it's observant, okay? The portrait of an immature man and two women who humor him for a while, paying the price that entails. As a record of a kind of everyday Parisian life, the film is superb. We think of the cafes of Paris as hotbeds of fiery philosophical debate, but more often, I imagine, they are just like this. People talking, flirting, posing, drinking, and there's a lot of drinking in this movie, smoking, telling the truth and lying while waiting to see if real life will ever begin. And I just want to say that last line here, while waiting to see if real life will ever begin, because so much of what these characters do feels like going through the motions of living. And I see that frequently in good movies where characters aren't aware that this is it, this is life. And it's almost like they're waiting on that next step. And so there's a brilliance in this film. I think some of this, you can kind of get into the weeds in terms of what's real and what's taken from real life. There is some study you can do on that, but it does feel as realistic as any series of conversations you're ever going to see. And it can be kind of a difficult film to describe, so I just wanted to talk about a few themes that I saw, a few similarities. One, I put my friend Fellini up here because the one comparison you could make of this film to another film, although they're not doing the exact same thing by any means, but you can't help but think of, you know, Marcello in La Dolce Vita, wandering from relationship to relationship or situation to situation. Parts of that film very much remind me of that. You know, for a film called The Mother and the Whore, you might think this takes sort of a negative stab at women. That is not true at all, okay? If anything, this is anti-patriarchal or anti. So, if you know, it might remind you like something like Daisies, or more specifically, and I had this, yeah, here it is. It might remind you a little bit in a way of La Cérémonie, and I don't, you know, just these ideas that women can break free from conventions, in this case of traditional family or traditional roles. Because nothing about this film is that conventional. Although I don't want to say that this film is particularly made to be that provocative, although it certainly gained this reaction from, you know, for example, Ingrid Bergman, who was the president of the jury and did not like the film. Despite the fact that she did a film like Notorious, which, you know, you kind of would, it was hard, I think, for certain people to see the genius of the film because of how frank, for example, Veronica was. She talks pretty honestly about her dalliances. Like, it might be shocking to hear that for some people who are used to this idea of a traditional woman being at least outwardly chaste or something like that. She just takes all that away and throws that in the trash can because she is honest, okay? Another bit of commentary here from Jonathan Rosenbaum, another critic I like to read sometimes. He said something that I think a few people are going to walk away with feeling from this film. In the final analysis, he says, the mother in the whore is in love with the idea of defeat, the picture is. That it is its reactionary strength, and most of what I cherish as well as mistrust about the film derives from this fact. Like, this film can feel a little bit defeatist, or a little bit, just like, I don't want to call it nihilistic, but kind of like a middle finger to everything. It is so wrapped up in this ideology that these young people have. Well, two of them are younger than the mother character, that you kind of might walk away feeling like maybe their randomness makes some kind of sense in a world that's essentially chaotic anyway, and it might leave you feeling sort of empty, and I suspect that is part of why it turned off some of the older generations when they originally saw it. But make no mistake about it, this is number one, it's a gorgeous film in the 4K restoration. There were parts where that 4K piece really paid off for me. So I wrote down a few. There's a part where a character is looking out a windshield. And I swear, as soon as I saw this, I reminded myself, okay, before I go west again on a road trip, I need to make sure I have good wipers because I don't want my windshield to start looking like that, because once it starts looking like that, it's harder to drive. And like, it was that exact in terms of the way the dirt and everything on the windshield looked. There are more than one shot of this, but there's this one shot early on in the picture where you see the camera, you see the shades through the glasses, part of Alexander's eye, and you see that like little kid from 400 Blows. And it's incredible, and only 4K can really do that, I think, anyway. There is a part where a character swigs a Jack Daniels bottle. I swear it looked like real life. And I'm not just pointing this out because I think that like the more realistic a picture looks on the screen, the better. I just thought it looked really good, and it does work for some of the gritty realism in the film. As far Alexander and Marie's relationship. So that's the mother. Okay. I think it's actually the most interesting part of the movie in some ways. And I know that Veronica is supposed to be a big part of the movie, and she definitely is, but I watched them, and I think that they are kind of an improvised couple. Like, they got together at some point, and they put together a makeshift solution for how they were going to get through that day, and they just kind of kept on in that cycle, and now they're in a relationship that's mostly toxic, I think, although it kind of works for them because there are these moments where you see Marie help him. There's even okay, so let me give you an example of this because I don't want to go too spoilery here, but he talks about like, like I got to change the sheets, but then she's like suggesting he needs to change them because, Veronica's been there, but like she's also kind of saying that like in terms of like take some responsibility and be a man. She's like mothering him in a way. And she does that. And it's really just this like incredible tightrope the film walks to be able to bounce back and forth between her being a lover and then like a mother and then like a role model and then like I can just anything you can imagine. That relationship has that spectrum. I think it's kind of interesting. It is, like I said, it's not a conventional picture, and it can kind of tickle your brain in an unpleasant way. And then sometimes you'll be laughing at it because it does have these shades of like unique black comedy going on. Sometimes like Alexander's interesting because sometimes he can sound pretty darn smart and he could sound poetic and charming. And then he'll say stuff that just makes him sound like an idiot because he kind of is. And these women do humor him, as I said earlier with the Roger Ebert quote. there's one line in here. I had to write this down because I was just like, he was talking about women that appeal to him. Like, he's on a date with Veronica, and he's like talking about women that appeal to him. And he said, like, a woman may appeal to me for external reasons, like, appearing in a Bresson film. And then, you see these, you look back at Veronica, and she seems so much more mature than him. And she almost looks like a character that could have been yanked out of one of those Bresson films, like Molchette, and just sort of like thrown at this like callous world. And she's got of all people, she almost has to be the romantic one, as practical as she is in life. And it just creates all of these fun, quirky dynamics. When they get into the whole like trifecta piece of this, and they're trying to figure out how to manage all that, it's like, it's awkward, and it's funny, and it feels realistic, and it, just like I said, it just takes all convention and just throws it out the window. So, would I get this? Would I get this? Yeah, I would probably recommend most Criterion collectors get this. Most. If you're interested in a really well-made piece of cinema that for a long time did not have accessibility, you need to get a copy of The Mother and the Whore if you're a Criterion collector, that kind of thing. But you need to understand, like, this film is just not very conventional in terms of the relationships. Like, you're not going to get that serotonin hit from, like, everything working out in a nice, smooth way as it goes along. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think some people are going to be pretty put off by this, but I think most people who are already buying Criterion films are going to really enjoy it. For me, this film's like pretty close to a masterpiece. I think it's really well done, but I can see some people having reservations. It's kind of hard to articulate. I don't know. What do you all think that have seen it? Maybe you have an exact reaction to it that you'd like to share. But if you found this review helpful, I know I've kind of been going all over the place because it's such a unique film that it's like hard to talk about in a linear way. If you did enjoy this and you want to click the like button, that will help grow the channel. I would appreciate that. And then, consider subscribing. I cover lots of stuff. I cover lots of Criterions. I even cover Westerns on here, like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which was referenced because there's a part where, like, dude opens up a newspaper and then this is on the back. No kidding. Like, I can't remember if it's like this specific movie or like a series of these movies. I think it might have been this movie. Someone can tell me, but this is like referenced. I just thought like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. That was kind of funny to me, like a nice little joke. Anyway, let me know your thoughts, and we will see you next time on Cody in the Cinema.